Hey everybody, welcome to The Warp. I'm Jack Rita, and in this video I'm going to take a look at 6 more aliens that were being designed for the 8th expansion, which we had codenamed Cosmic Universe. And there was a lot of really interesting ideas, and it was a lot of fun working on it. So we're releasing these so that people can, if they want to make their own homebrew aliens or their own versions of it, they should feel free to do so. And we certainly would love to get more feedback from people on it. So I will eventually release these for like TTS and whatnot. But let's dive in and let's start with the green alert. So the first one we're going to look at is an alien called a Xenomorph. So it's the power to emulate. It's green alert here. So as a main player, if you have a colony in the opposing main player system, or if they have a colony in yours, after counter cards are selected but before they're revealed, you may use, optional, the power by calling out Morph. When encounter cards are revealed, your encounter card is considered the same as the one your opponent reveals before any effects alter their encounter card. So if you use your power and your opponent reveals a Morph, both sides lose normally. So it's just an alien that can pretty much always play a morph card. I guess not always, but you have to at the beginning. You have to, if you don't have a colony in anyone's system and they don't have one in yours, you're not going to be able to do it. But later on in the game, as it goes on, then it's going to mostly come down to ships and reinforcements or other special effects. So that was here. It's a fairly simple, straightforward idea, and it's one of those things that morphs are just a thing that no Cosmic Encounter alien really does anything with. So I thought it would be, it was nice and appropriate to finally have one that, was in that field. So yeah, I enjoy the Xenomorph, and it's good to get another X alien into the mix. Our next one is Elitist. Now, some people may recognize this one. This is a Bill Martinson alien that was almost part of Cosmic Dominion. It's one of the ones that I loved a lot. A lot of people, not a lot. There were people that were like, "Oh, the language on it is just so obnoxious." But I was like, you know what? I like it. So here it is: the power of sanctimony. When thou wert neither a main player nor an ally, and didst play no cards during the encounter, upon its end thou mayst use thy power to celebrate thy purity. If thou wert invited to ally by none, receiveth thee 4 rewards. If by precisely one, receiveth thee 2 rewards. And if by both main players, draws thee but a single card from yonder deck. So this is all about whether or not you have been invited to be an ally. And so if neither main player um, or ally, if you were neither the main player nor ally and didn't play any cards during the encounter, that's when you get to use the power, and you're just picking up rewards. And if neither of them invited you, you're going to get a lot of rewards. So the idea is this: really, the soft advantage here is you're probably going to get invited, and if it's only one player who invites you, then you're going to get you're still going to get 2 rewards. But if they both do, then you get to draw a card from the deck. So and that's it. So that's not a reward if you're just invited by both players. You just get to draw a card from the Cosmic deck, not the reward deck if it's in play. So I really like this alien, and it is proven to be effective and interesting, and it really shakes up a lot of the alliance dynamics and whether or not early on in the game people are like, I'm not inviting you unless I'm planning to invite normally. But later on in the game, again, as people get too closer to winning, or if you start to have an absurdly large hand as the elitist, then people are like, "Oh, what do I do here?" And that's the sort of tough decision making that I love to see in games. So, yeah, I was very happy to finally get this in here. Although, of course, the expansion's not being published, but I would have been very happy to see Elitist join the pack. Next up, we have Attorney, and this, as you can see, whoops, I guess I meant to update that. That's the wrong icon because this is actually an Essence alien, and as you can see, there are some essence cards here. So Attorney is the power of contracts. And this was inspired by a homebrew that some of the playtesters had been working on with contracts to deals. I wasn't completely sold on the contracts idea as being officially part of the expansion, but I thought there was room for an interesting alien with essence cards. And I liked the idea that this expansion, had it been published, would have had a good number of green alerts. It would have had the deck aliens, which there's a link to that in the description, a new class of aliens that did their own thing. But it was going to have a couple other things that were familiar to players. So another essence alien. So let's take a look at Attorney. At the start of each other player's turn, you can use this power to give the offense a face-up contract from your essence card cache. So remember, with essence cards, you're always going to have 3 of these cards as a cache, like a separate little hand. And if they already have one, collect the previous one, gaining the benefits listed on it as if you made a deal, then placing the contract in your unavailable pile. That means that there's incentive for people to use these things, because otherwise you're going to get some kind of benefit. So whenever players with contracts are involved in a deal, they may honor the terms of their contracts as part of the deal. If either or both players with contracts do not adhere to the terms of their contracts, you may gain up to 1 colony in the system of a player not honoring their contract. So the idea is, once they've got these contracts, they're supposed to try to do these things. And if they don't, then you as the attorney are going to get a free colony. So, and isn't that just like an attorney to just stick it to you, even if you're a client? Somehow they get the upper hand. Any player with a contract returns it to your unavailable pile once they have made a deal, regardless of whether or not they honored the contract. And for each contract that does get honored as part of a deal, you gain a reward. So it's win-win for you as the attorney. But it's a matter of, what sorts of things are you doing? So let's take a look. So we've got... First of all, we have one's called Little Base. So both main players must gain a foreign colony with only one of their ships on it. So those are the terms of the deal. And if the deal is honored, both main players may draw 2 cards from the cosmic deck. So there's other incentives. So these contracts, they're not always bad. Certainly you may not be crazy about the idea of just having one of your ships on a foreign colony, but like, well, I'm going to get some cards and I'll get somebody out there eventually. It's maybe not too bad. Big Base, sort of the other side of this, is both main players have to have a foreign colony with 4 of their ships on it. And then they'll get 1 card from the cosmic deck if they honored that deal. Randos. 1 player in the deal must give 2 cards at random from their hand to the other player. And then both playing players will retrieve 2 ships from the warp. So you can sort of see the pattern here. Uno. 1 player in the deal must give their whole hand except 1 card of their choice to the other player. And then if they honor it, they each draw a card from the cosmic deck. A whole hand, 1 player must give their whole hand to the other player. And if it's honored, then they both retrieve 2 ships. 1 player gives all artifacts to the other player, and then they can get 1 card. All flares, and then they get 2 ships. All negotiates, and then they draw 1 card. And then must give their highest attack card to the other player, and then they get 2 ships. So that is how it works. And as you can see, again, if you collect a contract back, then you gain up to 1 colony. Oh, no. If you collect a contract back, collect the previous one, gaining the benefits listed as if you made a deal. So here, as the attorney, you're probably drawing a card or getting some ships back if you gave somebody a contract and they didn't end up using it by the time it was time for you to give them another one. So I think this is a fun alien. It's one of those, like Lloyd, I'm in here messing with your mind and bureaucracy. All right, and then we have Q. So many of you will be familiar with Q. This was an alien that was part of the Mayfair edition. Now, this was one of my least favorite aliens in the Mayfair edition. I did not enjoy it. I did not ever want to choose it. And then I began to just not include it in the deal of aliens. I know that there's a couple of people out there in the cosmic universe who do like Q, have wanted Q to get in there. But then, and for a long time, I was like, Q will never be published. I'm just going to do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen. But then I was like, well, maybe that's not a very good attitude, and maybe I should think about what would I do to Q to making an alien that I would actually want to play. And so as you can see, we've got some tokens here. So let's take a look at how Q has changed. It's pretty straightforward. It almost could have been a green alert, but I'm fine with having it be yellow. So the power to order. So at the end of each player's turn, use this power to choose which player will next take a turn by giving them an order token, if they do not already have one, even yourself. A player with an order token must abide by its effects for each encounter they are the offense. And then you'll collect all order tokens at the end of the encounter when all players have one. And so taking a page out of Grudge, there's no setup text with like, take the order tokens. It's not necessary. Grudge doesn't have it. Grudge is just like, you give out a Grudge token. So you've got all these order tokens. So let's take a look at what these order tokens do. So here you've got retrieve 2 extra ships, and there's a little power or timing strip thing on here. So when you're the offense, you retrieve 2 extra ships, and this is one that Q will love to give to themselves. But again, if you're making deals with people, or you're just saying, look, invite me, and when it's your turn, or I'll have you go next, and I'll give you this token. There are 2 with no effect, so you can always just say, there's nothing special about this one. Here you have a +1 ship limit in the gate. There's a -1 ship limit to a minimum of 1, a limit of 1 ally, and then you've got a draw 1 card from the deck each time you're the offense as a regroup, and then discard 1 card from your hand, which can also be very good. So this, I think, it's very straightforward, and it's very easy to understand. It's not intrusive. It's a very simple concept, but I think just that little extra bit made Q a lot more interesting for me as a player. And so I'm very excited about this version of Q. And so I hope that people just make some tokens like this. And for those of you who already have Q as a homebrew that you've added to your edition, I hope that you will consider taking it to the next level with these order tokens. So, and with Fantasy Flight, they love tokens, especially for helping to keep track of things, and that I think would be necessary. You want to make sure that you know who's had a turn, who hasn't. So this was going to be a sort of thing that would happen anyway. So it's just nice that they have the added effect of spicing up your encounters in some way. All right, we've got our last 2. We're going to take a look at Hydra first. So this is an alien that I worked on with Kevin Wilson. He had an idea. He wanted to come up with a way to really do 2 encounters or two attacks. And there's been a lot of people with the idea of like, how do I attack 2 systems at the same time? There's quite a couple of those on the warp, but none of them really quite worked. I've definitely tried all of them, but I think Hydra finally works. So power of multiples as the offense after aiming the hyperspace gate uses power to aim the Hydra space gate, and this was going to come with another hyperspace gate, and it actually says Hydra space gate here on it, and as you can see, it's clearly different. So the Hydra space gate in the next system of another player clockwise from the one determined by Destiny. So Destiny may say, yeah, you're attacking purple, and so the Hydra space gate will go to green, and it's another player. So if you are green, it would just go to white, so whatever. So that's how that's going right there. And so what you're going to do is it's considered a hyperspace gate for all effects. You're going to launch up to 4 of your ships to both gates. In the alliance phase, you make separate invitations for both gates, and each defensive main player may invite allies normally, and players may be allies in both gates. A main player at one gate can be an ally in another. However, players allied with you in one gate cannot ally against you in the other. So in the planning, and they can't ally, but they could be a main player against you. That's fine. In planning, you play 1 encounter card, which will count for your side for both gates. But your ships on both gates will count their totals for both gates. So that means if you have 4 ships here and 4 ships there, then you're attacking with 8 ships in each of these. So a little bit of a perk. And as you can see, this one's a tiny bit smaller, but that was just because I was trying to be cognizant of Punchboard. This expansion was going to have a lot of punch board. There were a lot of tokens for all the systems, and here's some tokens right there. But maybe this would have ended up being just as big. That's fine. So yeah, and if a deal situation occurs at both gates, all main players are involved in a single deal situation, and no player can gain more than they could normally. So if it's just one, like this was a deal, but this was not, that's fine. You just have these two main players are dealing. But if there's there's negotiate, or whatever, motion control, then it's one deal, and Hydra is only going to get one colony at most out of it, plus whatever else happens. But yeah, it's just a three-way deal, like what the Diplomat does. So nothing crazy there. And this is a fun alien. I enjoy this a lot. And you draw a wild destiny. You're like, all right, I really need to think about which two systems do I want to attack here. And so yeah, you've got a lot of potential. I mean, you could be getting two foreign colonies on one. Especially if you got a good card, you're like, oh, I've got the attack 40, so I'm gonna get a foreign colony here, I'm gonna get one there, and then I get another encounter. So maybe I have another good card, or maybe I've got a kicker because you're playing the one encounter card, so you'd be kicking both encounters. So just think about that for a second. So yeah, Hydra, that's pretty crazy. And then it brings us to our last one, Energy. Now this one is still, there's some wording things that we're in the process of working out. And this alien is out there. It's a really bizarre alien. It does have some game setup text, which I think you would just have to have. But you have no ships. And after you are dealt your starting hand, you may place an attack card from your hand on each or any of your home planets if able. So yeah, you'd be like, all right, I'm putting, I'm putting this right here. I'm putting this one right here. That might be all we have. And so you're just like, all right, great. And maybe you probably would have put a couple more down, but that's your setup. So whenever you would add a ship to the encounter or to a researching tech, you must use a card from one of your colonies. You may only use one card, which counts as one ship, but its value towards encounter totals is its attack value. So if it's an attack 8, it would count as if there were 8 ships there. When returning cards to your colonies, you may place them on any of your colonies to a home planet where you do not have a colony, or to your hand. Cards used as ships that would be lost, captured, or removed from the game are discarded. For any effect that forces you to lose ships, like Shadow, you may discard attack cards from colonies, targeted or otherwise, or any cards from your hand for each ship that would be lost. So that's hard you're not necessarily going to lose your foreign colonies, because you can always just go, well, let's lose this one instead, or one from my hand. And then whenever you would retrieve a ship from the warp, you may use this power to place an attack card from your hand onto any of your colonies, including your home planets where you do not have a colony, and draw a card from the deck. You do not lose your power for having too few home colonies. So yeah, I've always wanted to do something like this where you're like, yeah, I'm using these are my ships. So yeah, all these would be gone. But you're just like, all right, that's what I got here. I've got a 10 here, so if you're attacking me, I got 10. Plus, I'm still playing an attack card, or an encounter card. So this can be very powerful, but you have vulnerabilities, and so that's one of the things that we were going through in our play testing, was all the different ways that Energy was vulnerable, and then trying to do some, trade-off analysis of like, all right, it can be really powerful. And is that enough for some of the weaknesses? So like I said, this one was still a little bit in flux. It needed to be play tested a lot with a lot of other aliens, just to sort of see how those effects, different alien effects and flare effects, and of course artifacts and whatever else, space stations and Lux and moons, how that was going to change things up. And it might have ended up getting some, do not use with blah, blah, blah. But my hope was that we'd find a way around it. And it might have had a little section in the rule book that said, here's some extra notes on Energy that we just didn't want to stick on the alien sheet, so that the text was a 3-point font. Some Q&A on Energy. But it might have been the sort of thing where we're like, yeah, there's too many edge cases where there's no elegant way to deal with whatever. And so I had a couple of aliens, in backup, But what I will say is these are really the only two red alert aliens. I don't think any of the deck aliens were red. No, they're green and yellow. So there were only going to be two red alert aliens in this expansion. And if we got rid of energy, it might have only just been the one, Hydra. So that is kind of interesting because, again, ever since Cosmic Eons, which had a lot of red alert aliens, I've been determined to try to keep the mix heavier on the green and lighter on the red, because a lot of people were certain that there were no more alien ideas out there that were going to be any good. And if they were good, they were going to have to be red alert because they were going to do something that was way too complicated. I mean, this is a little bit complicated because you've got some strange things that are going on, but it's not too bad. This is going to be one of the most complex aliens in the whole game. Sort of thing where like a lot of questions on Board Game Geek or wherever. But we were hoping to try to get out in front of that and in seeing if there were any other little pithy phrases that can be like, treat this as that. But yeah, we had played a lot of games with it, and it has undergone some revisions in the wording. But a number of pretty successful play tests. Every time I've tried it out, I've had a lot of fun with it, but it can certainly be challenging at times, and it just needed to be exposed to a lot more configurations of aliens. You're never going to get every configuration, but and other effects too. It's not just aliens. You're like, this one flare is going to create this weird situation where you're like, oh, what do I do in this situation where I've got all these cards? So certainly we hadn't thought of everything. But there you have it, the 6 more aliens. Let me know in the comments what you think of these aliens. And again, feel free to contact Fantasy Flight. Probably will have absolutely no effect, but you never know. People are pervasive and they insist on persisting. You never know. The last thought that I had with Fantasy Flight was like, why don't you consider doing like a game found? And it's not really their style, but nothing is until you start to do it. And so that was my suggestion, was to say, let's do this expansion on as a crowdfunding thing, because if you don't get enough interest, then you just don't do it, and you call it a day. But there could be a lot of interest, especially because the idea was it was going to be about 30 more aliens, 42 special systems, and then the cherry on top was a storage solution, something that would fit the base game and all 8 expansions, including like sleeved or not sleeved, and of course, anytime you do a crowdfunding on something, you have the option for a lot of other stuff. And I might do a video on what would a crowdfunding of this be like, but I think about more alternate timeline aliens. There's a lot of people have been posting theirs, and people, I've posted some of mine in some of my YouTube videos, as I've done more than what was in Cosmic Odyssey. But I've come up with a dozen more age cards for the campaign, and more master cards and wrench cards, and I've got my Defender rewards, and I've got my flagships, and I got a lot of other stuff, and so do other players. I know Bill Martinson has got a treasure trove of stuff that he hasn't even shared, so maybe I shouldn't say anything. But interesting ideas that could be the sort of thing you would see in a crowdfunding as an add-on, or here's a stretch goal or a daily unlock sort of a thing. So those I think it would be great. I think there's a big enough Cosmic community that would want this, but maybe I'm wrong. Let me know. And again, like I said, send your letters to to Fantasy Flight, not to Cosmic Encounter. That wouldn't do anything. There you have it. Thanks for watching, everybody. That's it for this video, and we'll see you again soon.